Hi, I'm Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm really excited to show you the 2018 Mueller D Lite GX Rohloff. It's one of my favorite e-bikes. If you're looking for a very comfortable, incredibly safe e-bike that is almost maintenance-free, is easy to ride, and will outlast almost any other e-bike, then the D Lite GX Rohloff is definitely a good consideration. To come try it, to take advantage of our Try at Home program, visit our website at citruscycles.ca. There you can find our contact information to ask questions or set up an appointment to take it for a test ride. You can also find the current pricing, order online with free shipping anywhere in Canada, and check out the detailed specs. So in this video, I'm going to talk about who this bike is for, take you through the detailed specs of this bike and what the benefits are, and I'll do a ride test as well. Some of my favorite features of the D Lite GX Rohloff include Mueller's control technology. So I'll talk about this more in detail later in the video, but if you're looking for an incredibly comfortable bike for both short and long rides, then the D Lite GX Rohloff should be at the top of your list. If you want a bike that's safe for you or for a child in a child seat, then you'll love their control technology. I also really like the Rohloff Speed Hub, and I'll explain the benefits of that later in the video. But if you want a bike that will last forever with very little maintenance requirements, then a bike with the Rohloff is a great option to think about. If you want a bike that's really easy to use, that you can climb super steep hills or cruise along at faster speeds, then the Rohloff Speed Hub is definitely something you want to look for. Another favorite feature is the use of the dual batteries. You can see we've got two of them on there. So if you're like me and you like to go exploring, or sometimes do longer rides, or if you just aren't sure if you're going to end up riding all day or not, the dual battery feature will help you go the longer distances. And when you don't need both batteries, you can use a cool new case that I'm going to show you in a few minutes. I also love this Supernova M99 Lite. I'll explain the features of this later in the video, but if you want to be seen, or if you ride at night, I can't think of a better light or a better bike. So really, this bike is for almost everyone. It's incredibly capable, comfortable bike that's going to last a really long time. If you're looking for a mountain bike for really difficult technical trails, then the D Lite GX Rohloff probably isn't the bike for you, since we've got narrower tires. Well, we don't have plus size tires. We have 2.4-inch tires, and we have fenders, and sometimes that can cause a problem on a mountain bike. So instead, you would want to check out the D Lite Mountain Rohloff. It also uses a Rohloff. It's from Mueller, but it's configured specifically as a mountain bike, and you can find that on our website at citruscycles.ca. Otherwise, for virtually everyone else, this is a dream bike. As with all Mueller e-bikes, the D Lite GX Rohloff is custom assembled in Germany for you. Just by looking at the bike and then by riding, you experience the attention to detail, the excellence in engineering, and focus on quality, which is exactly what you would expect from a bike made in Germany. The design of the bike and every component was carefully selected to come together to provide the best possible experience and to ensure that it lasts a really long time. And all of that shows when you come and ride it. The D Lite is available in 3 sizes and 3 colors. You can see the white in my video review of the D Lite GT Nu Vinci, and you can also get it in solar orange, which is kind of a coppery color, and the urban gray metallic you see here. This is the medium size. You can also choose the drivetrain and tires, and you can find all these options and the specs on our website at citruscycles.ca. For example, the D Lite Touring would give you a traditional chain and 11-speed cassette and derailleur, while the D Lite GT Touring is the same, but it upgrades the tires to Schwalbe's Supermoto X 2.4-inch wide tires, which are great for off-road use, and I definitely recommend that upgrade. You can also get the D Lite Nu Vinci, which replaces the chain with a belt, and instead of a cassette or the Rohloff, you get a Nu Vinci continuously variable transmission. And of course, you can also get the Nu Vinci with the upgraded Supermoto X tires, so that's called the Nu Vinci GT, and there's a video review of it on our website as well. And of course, instead of a cassette and chain or a Nu Vinci system, you can get the Rohloff, which we've got on this bike, and this of course is the D Lite GX Rohloff. So for the detailed specs of all these, to come and try out the different options, again, all that's on our website at citruscycles.ca. Let me take you through some of the special features of this very unique bike. Let me start with what Mueller calls control technology. So you can see we have the front suspension fork, and a lot of bikes have that. That, of course, gives you more comfort. It gives you less fatigue for riding because it's not transmitting all of the bumps and vibrations from the road to your hands and your upper body, so that's a nice feature. And it also gives you more control over uneven surfaces. So if you had a rigid fork, you're probably going to try to avoid bumps and potholes and things like that. When you have the suspension fork, you can just keep driving right through. When they built this bike for me in Germany, I decided to have them upgrade the suspension on the bike from the Suntour Ion Air fork, which is a very good fork, to the Fox Float 34, and that's even better. This is a new option for 2018, and I really noticed a difference between the two when I upgraded. So for me, it was well worth the upgrade. There's nothing wrong with the Suntour suspension. It's very capable. But I find the Fox Float to definitely be more cushier, and so for me it was worth the upgrade. I ride my bike a lot and I like having that comfort. Now the neat thing about whatever fork you get is they are both e-bike specific. So you can see this is e-bike optimized, and that means a couple of things. First, they make the fork stronger. You can see it's quite a burly fork here, because on an e-bike, especially when you have dual batteries and you have the motor, the bike is heavier, and so they want to make sure that they use a burlier fork, stronger fork, so that it's going to last. The other interesting thing they do is that they optimize the fork in terms of its performance based again on the higher weight of the bike. So the bike will respond differently with that extra weight than a non-e-bike would, and so they tweak the fork to accommodate that, which is great. Now, what makes this bike unique is that the rear wheel here is also on an independent swing arm and a rear shock. So you can see we've got the Fox Float shock here. We've got a lockout here. We can adjust from open, medium, and firm, which is great. And on the front fork here as well, we have the adjustments to open it up or close it or anywhere in between. And you also have some rebound adjustment. Both of these are air forks, of course, so you can actually take a shock pump, and Mueller even includes a shock pump with the bike, which is great. And you can adjust the air based on your weight and how you want the bike to handle. Now you may be thinking, okay, why do I care that I have a rear shock? If this were a mountain bike, we'd call it a full suspension mountain bike. And you're probably thinking, you know what, I don't need a full suspension mountain bike. I'm not, jumping off mountains and that sort of thing. But a full suspension on a touring bike like this has a lot of benefits. Yes, it gives you the same benefits as a front suspension fork, such as having more comfort and less fatigue, but perhaps more importantly is this idea of control. So I talked about having more control over the bike when you have the front suspension fork, and if you think about it, it makes sense. You can go over rougher roads, through potholes and that sort of thing, and you're not going to lose control over the bike. You're not going to feel like it's trying to throw you off. How much more so when you add a shock and independent swing arm to the rear wheel. And so that basically ensures that both of your wheels, the front and the rear wheel, are always on the ground, giving you more control. And when you combine that with these awesome Schwalbe Rock Razor tires here, it feels like I'm glued to the road. It's like my tires are Velcroed on the trail, and it's an incredible experience that gives you a lot more confidence. Really, you have to try it. So come and compare the D Lite, which is full suspension, and the Charger, which is also from Mueller and is a hardtail, and you'll find that you'll feel more confident on the D Lite with that control technology, and not just on uneven ground, even just around corners. My wife, for example, isn't a super confident cyclist, and when she tried the Mueller Homage, which is a step-through that also uses their control technology, she was really surprised at how much more confident she felt and how much more quickly she would ride where she would normally slow down. So not only does it improve your safety because you're able to handle difficult surface conditions such as broken pavement or railway lines, gravel, potholes, it also makes you more predictable for motorists, so you're not swerving to avoid potholes or other obstacles in the road, or suddenly slowing down. And so when you can drive in a straight line at a consistent speed, you're going to be a lot safer because you're a lot more predictable to motorists. What this means is that you are more likely to ride your bike, and that's what we want. When you get an e-bike, we want you to love it because we want you to ride it. You're going to take longer rides, you're going to use it more often because you're going to be less fatigued. So you're going to find it more enjoyable, and you're also going to feel safer and more confident, and so you'll use it in situations that maybe you didn't before. Another great benefit of the control technology is that the rack here is actually part of the suspension system. And so whatever you place on the rack also is isolated from the terrain and from the road and from the potholes, and really has a very smooth ride. So if you're putting a child seat on there, that's really great. Not only is the child going to have a more comfortable ride, they're going to be more secure, but you're going to be a lot more confident because you're not feeling like you're worried about obstacles on the road or things like that. So it's definitely worth considering this control technology for that as well. So let me talk about the dual batteries. Reese & Mueller uses the new 500 watt-hour battery on all of their bikes here in Canada, which is awesome. That means you get 25% more range than the previous PowerPack 400, which is still available. Now, the great thing about this is actually a Bosch specific battery, and you'll notice that Reese & Mueller kept it plain. They didn't put any stickers or anything like that on it, and a lot of times bike manufacturers they'll put a sticker on it to try to really integrate it into the frame. I like the fact that they didn't, because that means, you know, a number of years from now, if you decide to buy another battery or a spare battery, it's going to look great on the bike. You're not going to be, you know, wishing that you could put the old sticker on it to really blend it in. So I like that about it. Now, as I mentioned, this is a Bosch specific battery, and so that has a lot of benefits. That means you're not relying on Reese & Mueller to have batteries 4 or 5 years from now. You know that Bosch is going to have them. In fact, Bosch has a real strong focus on backwards compatibility, forwards compatibility, and availability of parts. So when they came out with this PowerPack 500, they made it backwards compatible. So if you had a older Bosch powered e-bike, say that came with the 400 watt-hour battery, you could buy the new 500 watt-hour and put it on there because it's backwards compatible. Same format, same charger, everything is the same about it. So I really love that about Bosch. They're really focused on making sure that your investment is going to last, that in the future you can get spare parts. And as they upgrade the technology, you'll be able to take advantage of that. Now the cool thing is that the D Lite has the option of having dual batteries. So instead of just one 500 watt-hour, you've got one down here plus another one up here. So you have 1,000 watt-hours, a kilowatt-hour of power. So with this bike under real-world conditions, with hills, rough terrain, the types of things that you would really experience on a bike, you can literally ride all day without charging. So I would say on level 1, you could easily get 300 kilometers. If you go to level 2, which is what most people ride on, you'll probably get, say, 120 to 160 kilometers. You know, which is still 5 to 8 hours of riding for a lot of people. The numbers I'm giving you are not the published numbers from the bike manufacturer, okay? I'm actually giving you real-world riding conditions with a real-world cyclist like myself, who isn't particularly light, because I want you to be, you know, really happy with the range that you're able to get from your bike and not be disappointed because they don't match up with some published numbers. So I'm always going to give you the realistic numbers on this bike. Now, the neat thing about the dual batteries is not only does it prolong the range, but it also will prolong the lifespan of your battery, and that's for 2 reasons. One is that you're actually using each battery 50% less than you would if you just had a single battery, and so that prolongs the life of the battery, obviously. But Bosch also does a really clever thing when they're using the batteries. So as you ride, they actually draw about 5% from one battery and then switch to the other one and draw another 5%. The reason they do that is that, again, prolongs the lifespan of your batteries. What's happening is your battery is getting a break, and so that actually helps the health of the battery. If you completely drain one battery and then completely drain the other battery, then it's not really giving the battery a break in between discharges. When you can switch back and forth, that 5%, that actually helps the health of the battery, so that'll give you slightly longer range than if you had drained one and then the other, but definitely prolongs the lifespan of your battery. Now, it's pretty cool because if you don't want to ride with both batteries, that's not a problem. You can remove the top battery here, and the bike comes with a little plug that plugs the that just covers up the port there to keep it clean and dry. And then you can actually put a battery bag on here. So let me grab I'll take this battery off, and I'll grab the bag and show you what it looks like, so you can see that option as well. So if you knew you weren't needing the dual batteries, or if you decided to configure this bike with just a single battery, which you can, then you can get that optional battery bag to use in the place of the second battery. So let me grab that and show you what that looks like. Okay, so you can see that I've removed the second battery, and now I've got this really cool battery bag here that basically looks like a battery, and it has a metal frame here and kind of a waterproof nylon case. And so all I do is put that on the bike as if it were a battery, and it just locks into place there. And so just like the batteries lock on and you need a key to remove it, you don't need the key to install it, you just need a key to remove it. The bag is similar, so now it looks like a second battery. But on each side you have a little zipper here, and you can open that up, and on one side, there we go, we have a nice large compartment, and over on the other side we have a smaller compartment for keys or your wallet or something like that. So it's really, you know, a great idea if you know you're not going to need the second battery, you're just running to the grocery store, or you know, you're on your way to work or whatever, and it's a short distance, but you want somewhere to put your keys and your wallet and your phone that's easily reachable. This is awesome, because if you put it in a saddlebag or your pannier bag, it's hard to reach while you're riding. So I think it's a brilliant idea, and that is an option that you can consider when you're configuring the bike. And you can find all the configuration options and prices on our website at citruscycles.ca. Okay, so I put the second battery back on, and I should mention that you can, of course, charge the batteries on or off the bike. So to charge them off the bike, you would simply take the key and remove the battery. Remove the top one first, it's a little bit easier, but hang on to it so it doesn't drop. There's carrying handles you can see, which is great. If you prefer to charge them on the bike, then you'll notice there is a charging port here, and you can just plug in the charger, and that will charge both batteries on the bike for you. So you have both of those options. Now, I always encourage our customers, when you're configuring the bike, it's always worth considering the dual battery option. After investing in an e-bike, a lot of our customers come back to us and tell us that they're riding their bikes further more often than they ever imagined, and that's so encouraging. Often they buy a bike for riding around town or commuting, and they discover the joy of touring. So Vancouver Island, for example, is a great place to tour. Maybe you're like me and you just enjoy exploring. I love riding on old forestry roads, fire roads, heading down the bush roads to see where they go. And so sometimes that means I end up riding all day, and when I have the dual batteries, I don't have to worry about it. Or maybe you just want to be able to put the assistance level up into turbo and ride up and down the mountains without worrying running out of batteries. So no matter what you discover you can do with your e-bike, the D Lite GX Rohloff will be able to handle it, especially when you've got the dual batteries. So far, everything I've talked about applies to all models of the D Lite, and you may want to check out my video review of the D Lite GT Nu Vinci, and I've also got a video that compares the two. What makes this D Lite special is the use of the Rohloff Speed Hub 14. It's internally geared, it's a 14-speed marvel of German engineering. It has a number of advantages. So one is that you can shift while you're stopped or while you're coasting. So if I come up to the shifters here, bike is stationary. On a regular bike with a cassette chain and derailleur, if you were in the wrong gear, you can't stop, or you can't shift while it's stopped. But I can with the Rohloff. So you can see the little bird telling me the gear that I'm in. So I can just twist that, and it's already shifted. So now I'm in 8. Now I'm in 10. So even while I'm stopped, I can very easily shift that, which is great. Or if I'm coasting, so I don't have to pedal either. It has a massive 520% gear ratio to make it really easy to climb hills, and you can also pedal fast going down hills. It's incredibly reliable and durable, as shown by the fact that there are roll-off speed hubs with over 300,000 kilometers on them. So let me explain in more detail. Like I said, you can shift while you're stopped. So on a regular bike, if you come to an intersection, come to a stop sign, or worse, somebody cuts out in front of you and you have to stop suddenly, and you forget to downshift, or you don't have time to downshift, you're riding along in one of your higher gears, and then boom, you have to stop. It's a real pain because now you're in the wrong gear for starting out. It's really hard to pedal. If you shift while you stop, of course, it's not good for your drivetrain. You're going to hear grinding and it's going to be really hard to pedal. With the roll-off here, I can very easily, while I'm stopped, shift to an easier gear to help me out when I'm pedaling. And so I make a big deal out of that because when we do e-bike tours, I find that the biggest challenge that our customers have is remembering to downshift before stopping, so that it's easier to start out. If you ride in traffic where you have to stop suddenly, of course, you may not have enough time to downshift. With the roll-off, that isn't a problem because you can shift while you're stopped. Now, if you live in a hilly area like I do, you probably do everything you can to avoid stopping on a hill. With the roll-off, if you have to stop, no problem. You can downshift to an easier gear and start up again. The other neat thing is that you can anticipate needing an easier gear while you're flying down a hill. So we've got quite a few hills here in Ladysmith where you go down and then you have to go back up. So while I'm coasting down the hill, I can actually shift through all of my gears. So if I'm cruising along and I'm in 12 or 14 and I notice I've got a hill coming up where I have to climb and it's really steep, I can just fly through all those gears to 4, 5, 3, whatever I want while I'm coasting down the hill. On my mountain bike with the 11-speed cassette, for example, I have to do this funny thing where I'm braking down the hill because I'm going too fast, but I'm pedaling at the same time because I need to shift gears. You won't have to do that with the roll-off system. As I mentioned, it has a massive 520% gear ratio, so the low gear is really low for climbing virtually any hill. I very, very rarely use my first and second gear on the roll-off. It would require a very, very steep hill before I would need to do that. And at the same time, it also gives you a high gear that allows you to keep pedaling even past 65 kilometers an hour without having that hamster wheel effect where your legs are spinning too fast. So you can actually contribute power at those speeds, which is pretty impressive. Now, it is a twist shifter, as you've noticed. Some people have a hard time moving from a trigger shifter to a twist shifter. I can understand that. I have gotten used to it. I don't mind it at all. I especially like the fact that it allows me to fly through all of my gears at once instead of having to press each time. If you really can't get used to it, there are aftermarket products that you can put on here that allows you to change it to trigger shifters. And of course, if you check out the D Lite mountain roll-off, that one actually has the new electronic shifting, which is really exciting from roll-off as well. The neat thing about having this type of shifting system, though, is you'll notice that there are no barrel adjusters here on the cables, and that's because the indexing for the hub is in the hub itself. And so on a regular bike where you've got regular gears, you'll notice that the cable stretches and things get out of whack and out of alignment and you need to make those adjustments. You won't have to worry about that with the roll-off because all the indexing is in the hub, and so it's not going to go out of index. If the cables stretch, it's not going to affect the shifting at all, and so that's a really nice feature. You have to do an oil change once a year on the roll-off. That's about it for maintenance. You're not going to have to worry about making adjustments. This is a type of thing that's used by people who do bike touring. So like I said, there are speed hubs out there with over 300,000 kilometers on it. So this will probably last longer than your bike. And in fact, it's not unusual for people to have a roll-off and move it from bike to bike. So why is it so durable? Well, one of the great things is, as you can see, all of the gears are inside. And if you think about it, the worst place you could put your gears is on the outside of the bike, on the rear tire, where it's going to get full of mud and sticks and gunk, and you know, it gets out of adjustment, and you whack the derailleur and now it's bent and you have a new derailleur hanger, and you know, all of those things. With the gears being inside, they're protected from the elements, and that's fantastic. The other thing that it does is it helps your chain to last significantly longer. And that's because the chain is really a fixed length here. It's not jumping up and down sprockets like it would on a regular cassette, and it's that jumping up and down that really puts stress on the chain and causes it to wear very quickly. So on my mountain bike with cassette, you know, every 1,500, 2,000 kilometers, I'm putting a new chain on. With the Rohloff, you can expect the chain to last significantly longer than that, and so it does. In the end, when you add it all up, you may find that the Rohloff actually saves you money. Like I said, every 2,000 kilometers, I'm putting a new chain and often a new cassette and new derailleur on my mountain bike. That all adds up, especially if you ride a lot like I do. With the Rohloff, your costs are going to be limited to a chain. And I know some people that only change their chain every 20,000 kilometers on a Rohloff. So you're definitely going to get a longer life out of it. So in the end, you probably will save some money. You're definitely going to save more time, because really there's no maintenance other than that once a year oil change. There's no adjustments to be made, any of those things. And you know, keep the chain clean and oiled. But you know, one of the things that I don't mind riding in the rain. What I don't enjoy is coming back from a ride and cleaning all the gunk out of my derailleurs and the sticks and the leaves and everything, and just, you know, spending a whole lot of time cleaning my bike. With the Rohloff, you really don't have to do that. It's a great riding experience once you get used to it. One of the things I always tell people when they come to try it is it may take a few rides to get used to it, because you do need to ease off on the pedaling when you shift. If you're pedaling really hard and try to shift, you won't be able to. So you really do have to ease off on the pedaling in order to shift. Now, one of the interesting things is that when your pedals are up and down like this, there's no torque on them. So when you get good at riding a bike with a Rohloff, you find that when your pedals are up and down, you can shift, because it only takes, you know, a split second to shift. That's it, it's done. You don't have to wait for a complete revolution of the pedals like you do on a regular bike with the chain and cassette and derailleur. So here the shifting is instantaneous, so it's just a matter of the timing. So if you can make it so that you shift when your pedals are up and down, you won't even have to stop pedaling. When you first start out, you will find that you do need to very momentarily stop pedaling and then shift. But the shifting is so fast that you really only have to stop very, very briefly. When I first got my bike with a Rohloff, I actually practiced. I would ride along flat stretches and shift between two gears, and just so that my body could learn the timing, because I've been riding bikes with trigger shifters for years. So without even thinking of it, I know exactly when to back off, ease off on my pedaling and shift, because you need to do that with a regular drivetrain as well. And so it was just a matter of my body learning the timing to go, right, it only takes a split second. So ease off the pedaling or stop pedaling, very momentarily shift, and then you can start pedaling again. So that does take a little bit of learning. A couple other things to mention with the Rohloff. There isn't a chain guard on here. Maybe that would have been nice. I haven't had any problems, you know, with my pant legs getting dirty or caught or anything like that. We do have a nice bash guard here to protect the chain if you're out on trails and you get sticks or something in there. So that would have been interesting. The other thing that people often ask me about, this combination of the Delite with the Rohloff is not available with a belt. That would be cool as well, but I understand there's some problems with the chain line here. Belts are very finicky and as to how that works, and so with the chain they're able to get everything lined up perfectly and meet Rohloff's requirements. And that's one of the interesting things about the Rohloff system, is they work very closely with manufacturers to make sure that the bike is set up specifically for the Rohloff, and that you're going to have that longevity and durability and reliability that Rohloff is known for. And so you can be sure that Riesenmuller has worked with Rohloff to make sure that everything about this is perfectly aligned. In fact, you'll notice, because we've got a rear suspension here, that can affect the tension on the chain. We want consistent tension to the rear hub, of course, and so we've got this little pivot point here placed in the perfect position, so that when the chain, when the bike flexes and the chain changes, the tension remains the same. So that's again just the little engineering details that go into the bike to make sure that it all comes together and works really well. Okay, so let me hop over to one of the other standout features on the D Lite GX Rohloff, and that is the Supernova M99 Pro. It's an e-bike specific light, and it is only available on the D Lite GX Rohloff. Now, you can buy this light separately for around $6.99, and you can put it on any other Bosch e-bike, including the other D Lites or any other Bosch e-bike. But the wiring is a little bit complicated, so I'm really glad that Mueller included included the light with the bike. Part of the reason why the wiring is a little more complicated than a regular light is this is a much higher voltage light than your typical Bosch e-bike light. So they've actually have a specific wiring configuration that allows it to be wired into the CAN bus system to get higher voltage. So why would they need to do that? What makes this light so special? Well, there's a few features. First, it's really, really bright. On high beam, so there's a daytime running light, which you see right now. There's a high beam and a low beam, and the high beam is controlled by a high beam button right here, which is really cool. The high beam is 1600 lumens, and it's actually automotive certified brightness. So it's amazingly bright. It's suitable for any nighttime riding, including on mountain bike trails or dark country roads. Now on low beam, it's still incredibly bright, 1100 lumens. It ensures that you are seen and you can see, especially on dark city roads. And as I mentioned, it also has the daytime running light, which is what you're seeing right now. And that actually has a dual beam pattern. And you may be wondering, why are there dual beams? Why did they do that? What's going on here? Well, they did some research, and they discovered that when you have two distinct and very bright arcs of light, it's more visible from longer distances, but it also subconsciously signals to motorists that you are a fast-moving vehicle and not a slow bike, and that makes sense. When you have an e-bike, you are moving at higher speeds, so it's really nice that motorists will recognize you as a faster-moving vehicle and give you the respect and the distance that you need. So on a high beam, it can illuminate 380 meters ahead of you along the road, and it lights the complete width of the road as well. Now it does this, if you take a look closely in there, you can see that there's actually 99 separate mirrors, all calculated to enhance the brightness, and there's actually 9 automotive grade LEDs in there. Now the light is actually quite clever. It automatically switches from daytime running lights to a low beam as it gets dark. So if you enter a tunnel, the light will automatically brighten. So you can see if I cover the light sensor, the high beam comes on, and it stays on for a while just to ensure your safety, and then eventually it'll go back to the daytime running lights. So that happens automatically. So this light makes you safer by helping you to be seen and recognized as a higher speed vehicle that can't be ignored. If you ride at night, this is one of the few lights I've tried where I'm not riding faster than my light can illuminate the road ahead of me. And that's really important. You don't want to ride faster than your light can show you the road. Of course, there's also a very bright 2 LED rear light here. I'll just activate that. Turn the lights on. There we go. And it also has a built-in reflector. And you know, one of the things I love about the attention to detail that Mueller does here is you can see the wiring is actually running through the rack and then through the frame. And a lot of times I see lights where the wiring is kind of loose on the exterior or running under the fender, which of course is a terrible place because there's going to be a lot of water in there and you don't want the wiring getting wet. So it's just nice to see that attention to detail. Speaking of attention to detail, one of my most favorite features on the bike, which I know you're going to laugh about, is the water bottles. They actually use these fabric cageless water bottles. They just slide right off here. You can see there's just 2 knobs there that hold it on, not an ugly cage, and that just slides right on. You get 2 of them with the bike, and it's great because a lot of times with an e-bike, there's nowhere to put a bottle cage. You know, you've got 2 batteries in here, there's just not a lot of room. And even if there was room, you know, reaching down while you're riding, trying to grab it, or reaching off the rear seat is difficult. Here you've got these 2 water bottles right up front, easy to grab. I absolutely love them. I know it seems like a silly thing, but all of these things come together to really enhance the experience of riding the bike, and so I love the dual water bottles. And it looks good too. It's a nice, clean looking solution, so I'm really excited about that. Okay, so I've talked about a lot of the unique features that really make the D Lite GX Rohloff a unique bike. Let me now take you through some of the standard features that you'll find on a lot of the recent Mueller bikes. For example, the drive system is the Bosch Performance Line CX, and we're really fortunate here in Canada that recent Mueller is using the Performance Line CX on all of their bikes. Now, the Bosch system is a mid-drive, so you see the motor isn't in the rear hub. That's the Rohloff speed hub. That's your gearing system. That's your transmission. In the middle here is your motor, and so that gives you a very natural feeling because the motor is driving the chain, and that's what you're used to when you're riding a bike rather than being pushed along by the rear wheel. The mid-drive also addresses the issue of weight and balance by putting the weight in the middle of the bike. Same with the batteries, it's kind of in the middle, and so that doesn't have an adverse effect on the handling of the bike. It also means when you're using a mid-drive, because it's turning the chain, when you change gears on your Rohloff speed hub here, that is actually having an impact on the motor. In fact, the Bosch system is so clever that it has not only shift detection but shift recommendations. Those two work together. So when you shift, the Bosch system knows you're shifting, briefly cuts the power to help make it easier to shift. And if you're in the wrong gear, if it senses that you're in too high or too low of a gear, it will actually show you on the display up here, a little arrow will come up telling you that it recommends that you shift so that you are more efficient and so that the bike is more efficient as well. So it's really nice having a mid-drive, knowing that when you change gears, that's making it easier for you to climb hills, for example, because it is having an impact on the motor. The Bosch CX is Bosch's top-end drive system, so it has the most amount of torque. Now, a lot of times people come in and they ask me for the specs of the bike. They're asking about the wattage of the motor and that sort of thing. And really, the important thing with the motor is not the wattage, but the torque. And so with the torque, that is what you need to really climb up the hills. When you have the CX, that gives you the maximum amount of torque, which allows you to climb up hills very easily. It also is the most responsive. So as soon as you put a little bit of force on the pedals, it activates the motor to help you out. And a lot of times people ask me, well, does the Bosch system have a throttle, and why doesn't it? Really, if you think you need a throttle, come and try it first, and you may discover that you don't. A lot of times why people think they need a throttle is because they've experienced a bike where you have to pedal a full revolution before the motor actually assists you. With the Bosch system, that isn't going to happen. So if that were the case, yeah, I could see why you'd need a throttle. You're stopped on a hill and you have to pedal the bike one whole revolution before the motor kicks in. That'd be terrible. With the Bosch CX here, you put some force on the pedals and it's immediately going to contribute power, which is exactly what you need. And so you'll probably find with the system, you don't actually need the throttle. It also makes it safer because basically to make the bike go, you pedal. And the Bosch system actually senses how hard you pedal, that is your torque, how quickly you're pedaling, that is your cadence, and the speed of the bike, using a speed sensor back there, 1,000 times per second. And basically it's reading your mind. So if you pedal hard, it gives you more power. If you pedal lightly because you're on a difficult trail and you're not wanting to end up over a cliff or in the trees, then it gives you a little bit of power. And that's really important. That makes it more natural feeling, it makes it safer, gives you more confidence in riding. The other great thing about having the Performance Line CX is we have Bosch's new EMTB mode, which is an adaptive mode. So on the display here, you can see right now I'm on Eco, which is my lowest level of assist. I can adjust that to off, for example, by pressing the minus. Now it's off. Now on the remote here, which is really easy to access while you're riding with your thumbs or your finger, I press the plus to Eco. I can go up to Tour. Tour gives me 120% of my input power and is what a lot of people ride on. It gives you good balance of battery range and power. And if I press plus again, you'll notice down here where it says clock, it's going to flash to EMTB. And that tells me that we're in the dynamic mode. I'll do that again. There's the EMTB. a dynamic mode that automatically adjusts the assistance based on what you're doing. So I love riding on the EMTB mode because if I'm riding along flat, just touring around, it'll probably put it onto tour for me. If I get up to a steep hill, then it's going to automatically sense that I'm needing more power and more assistance, and it'll move me up to sport or up to turbo, give me the maximum amount of power. When I get to the top of the hill again and just need a little bit of power, it moves me back down. So that's a really neat mode. It's the adaptive mode. But of course, if you want full power, then you can press the plus and go all the way up to turbo, which gives you an incredible amount of power. Couple things I should mention before I forget, and I will talk about the display here, but this is the Intuvia display. Bosch has two styles of displays. They have the Purion, which is integrated with the control system on the left here and shows less information. This is the Intuvia, which is removable and shows you more information on the trip computer here. You can actually operate it while it's off the bike, which is pretty cool, and of course you can operate it on the bike. If you prefer it not to be removable, you'll notice that there's a little screw hole there and on the display, and so you can put a set screw through there and permanently attach it to the display. I like being able to remove it. And on the display here, you will notice we've got the battery level, the level of assistance, and there's a little graph here that's going to, as we ride, show you how much assistance the motor is providing, which is cool. And down here you've got your trip computer, which, like I said, you can operate off the bike by using the I button here. While you're riding, you'll find it easier to use the I button over here on the remote. That's going to cycle through some information like your maximum speed, your average speed, your trip time, which battery is being used right now on this dual battery setup, and what battery level for that specific battery is. And my favorite feature of the Bosch system is the range. And so this is an intelligent calculator that will dynamically adjust based on the battery charge, the last few kilometers that I've ridden, and the level of assistance that I'm in. So right now on Eco it's saying, okay, you'll get about 237 kilometers based on what you've just been riding. Then if I move up to Tour, it says 121, EMTB mode is 90, and up to Turbo gives me 74. So when you combine that with the trip distance, that's fantastic because you'll always know how much further you can go before you're going to run out of battery. And it's actually very, very accurate, which is great to see. So the Intuvia display, another benefit that it has over the Purion is it does have a USB flap on the side here, and you can use that to top up the charge on a cell phone or GPS or something like that. So that's a pretty cool feature. The Bosch system also has walk mode, and to activate that you would press and hold the button way over here on the top of the remote. This is a question I get asked a lot. So you see the plus button, slide your finger over, and now you can see there's a button there that actually says walk on it. Look at that, upside down, walk. There we go. So if you press and hold that, the bike won't actually move. Instead it'll say walk assist, press and hold plus. So now if I press and hold plus, the bike, let me try that again, so press and hold here, it says walk assist, press plus, and there we go. The bike is actually moving along at about a 4 or 5 kilometer an hour pace, so about a walking pace. So that means all you have to do is steer the bike. It's going to move itself. And you may be thinking, well, why do I care about walk mode? I want to go a lot faster than that. I don't want to walk with my bike. Well, there are going to be circumstances where you are going to have to get off your bike, maybe in a pedestrian area. Something that happens to me sometimes is that trails I'm riding on, there's stairs, and there's a very narrow section beside it that I can use to push my bike up the stairs. It's not rideable. Then I use the walk mode, because then I'm not having to use my strength to push the bike along, but instead I'm relying on the Bosch mid-drive. And so that's a really handy feature. I should mention, when you activate walk mode, the pedals will turn, of course, because it's activating the chain. So just make sure you're not standing too close, or you're going to get hit by a pedal. And you know, another good example of when walk mode is useful is one of the things people start doing when they get an e-bike. One of my favorite things to do is to ride to the ferry terminal, get on a ferry, and go riding on some of the Gulf Islands. If you get a BC Ferries experience card, the bike's free. But when you get off the ferry, they don't like you riding off the ferry off the ramp, and the ramp's always really steep. So being able to walk beside your bike and have it walk itself or push itself along is definitely a very handy feature. Okay, so while we're up here looking at the display, let me go over some of the other features of the bike. Some of the things that contributed to being very comfortable is the fact we've got these ergonomic grips here, which are nice, very comfortable. We've got a little bit of rise on the handlebars here, which again puts you in a really nice riding position. An elevated stem that helps you to be a little bit more upright than you would be on a mountain bike. So it puts you in a very comfortable position that you can see around you. If you're using this for commuting or in traffic or even touring, it's nice because you can enjoy the scenery that's around you, like we are here at Transfer Beach in Ladysmith, or pay attention to the traffic that's going on and still feel in control of the bike. So I really like the cockpit up here. We do have a bell is included with the bike, and like I said, there's also the control for the high beam. Oh, touch points. So yes, the grips I wouldn't change. They're fantastic. The saddle, I like the saddle. It's an Ergon SMC4L. A lot of times on bikes you see kind of no-name saddles. This is actually a really nice, high-quality saddle. I find it comfortable, but if you don't, of course, that's easy to change. And something that I probably would change on the bike would be the pedals. Now, not that there's anything wrong with these pedals, and certainly pedals are a tricky thing for bike manufacturers to decide what to include, because everybody has personal preferences, and so we're seeing some bike manufacturers not even including any pedals because they know that they're not going to win. That no matter what they put on, somebody's going to want something different. So don't be surprised if you want to change the pedals on your bike, because that's completely normal. So these are nice. They're kind of soft plastic grips here, and we've got reflectors, which is great for safety. We also have, speaking of reflectors on the front fork here, and I didn't install them, but Reese & Mueller does give you some reflectors to put on the spokes as well, because these tires don't have a reflective stripe because they're the upgraded Rock Razor tires. So anyways, pedals myself, I would change these to platform pedals with pins, either plastic or metal, in my case probably metal, and that's simply because I ride a lot in the rain, and so these, when they get wet, can be a little bit slippery. If you put something with pins, of course, just be careful because you could scrape up your shin or wreck your shoes. So I understand why they didn't put those on, but that's something that I would probably change myself. Otherwise, there's very little that I would change about the bike. I do find it very, very comfortable. So I had previously mentioned the rack, which is actually really cool. Like I said, it is part of the integrated suspension here. So it's really neat when you see somebody riding this bike. You'll notice that the tire is kind of going up and down over all the bumps, but the rider and their pannier bags or trunk bag or whatever they have on the rack is completely smooth, and that's because it's part of the control technology, part of the rear shock here. Again, attention to detail, Reese & Mueller included this really cool bungee cord, which is adjustable. So if you don't have your pannier bags and you're out riding and suddenly you see something at a garage sale you want to buy, or in my case you buy too much at the grocery store, they don't fit in your pannier bags, you need to put the milk on the rack, you can just adjust the bungee cord here and put whatever you want under there and clamp it on. And you know, in the past you've probably seen a similar idea with spring-loaded metal bars, which get really noisy, and eventually the springs wear out and gets really irritating. Bungee cord is, you know, by far a better solution because it's nice and quiet and very reliable. So yeah, the rack system, they even have the pannier blockers here and a couple places that you can put pannier loops through if you needed to do that. We have some great SKS fenders on here, nice good coverage. You can see we've got two struts back here plus an attachment point here and here to really keep them steady, and they're also silent. I've never heard these rattle. Same at the front here, it's attached to the suspension fork, and again, two adjustment points here to really make them very solid. I've never heard any noises from them, which is great. We've got a integrated kickstand here from Pletcher. It is the Flex 40, and you can see we've got some pretty durable bolts holding the kickstand on. We do have a tiny little set screw at the back here that you can adjust the length of the kickstand if you want. It's nice that it's at the back here, not anywhere near the middle where it could collide with the pedals, so you can actually keep the kickstand on and move the bike around, backing it up, and not worry about the pedals interfering with the kickstand. So for tires, this is the only D Lite. The D Lite GX Rohloff has the Rock Razor tires from Schwalbe. And these are like riding on zippers. They're an incredible tire. I really appreciate them, especially for the type of riding I do, because I do ride in wet and in mud and things like that. So upgrading these Rock Razors is a great idea. Now what I find interesting about it is Schwalbe originally designed these tires mostly for dry conditions. But when Riese and Müller put them on these MD40 really wide rims here, that really stretches out the tire pattern and the knobs here, so that these wider knobs kind of are at the side here and really don't come into play when you're riding on pavement. So when you're riding on pavement, you've got these smaller knobs here. It's quieter, it's lower rolling resistance, but they still, when it's wet, really give you a lot of traction and control. But with these wider knobs on the side here, when you get into gravel, sand, anything that's loose, and you get into mud, all of a sudden these start digging in. Or if you start cornering, so you're on wet pavement and you corner, you're going to lean the bike over a little bit, these are going to dig in. And so that's really nice, having that extra grip, extra traction, and I've been really impressed with the performance of these tires. So even on some of the other bikes that come with the Supermoto X tires, which are great tires as well from Schwalbe, but they're not awesome on mud, and so I do find that sometimes customers are upgrading to these Rock Razors if they're riding on mud with those Supermoto X. Again, the Supermoto X are great for all conditions except for mud, and then these Rock Razor kind of extend that to being really great on mud. Now, of course, if you were riding in the winter, you might want to put winter tires, and really, because these are the MD40 rims, you can actually go with some pretty nice other tires as well if you wanted to upgrade to knobby neck, because you don't care about the lower rolling resistance or quieter effect of these Rock Razors and you just want knobs everywhere. You could do that. For that matter, if you wanted to, you could actually take the fenders off and even put a 2.8-inch tire in there. There should be enough clearance in there as well. So, but if that's what you're doing, then check out the D Lite Mountain Rohloff, which is a more mountain-specific type of bike. You know, again, little things and attention to detail. I've set up these bikes as tubeless. You can do that. These are tubeless ready. It has the Travel Star level 3, so it has some puncture resistance as well. But if you go tubeless, you can get the air pressure a little lower, and it also gives you some increase in puncture resistance. When we did that, I noticed they're using really nice Schwalbe heavy-duty tubes. And a lot of manufacturers now are putting in these really cheap, thin tubes to help bring the published weight of their bike down, which is kind of silly. So it's nice to see that attention to detail. You can go tubeless if you want. If you keep the tubes that are in there, they're very high quality tubes. Brakes, you'll notice we've got the Shimano hydraulic disc brakes. We've got the fairly large, I think these are 180mm rotors on the front and the rear. And these are the Dior XT brakes. I love these brakes. A lot of people, when they come and ride this bike, they comment on how responsive the brakes are. We've got a tool-free adjustment here as well, so you can bring the levers closer or further away from the bars, which is really nice. And so on a heavy bike like this, you definitely want hydraulic brakes, and it's nice having those upgraded Shimano XT Dior brakes, which really give you a lot of stopping power. I'm trying to make sure that I've covered everything on this bike. We do have a Avis folding lock. This is the Bordeaux 6000. It's actually included with the bike. The cool thing is that the key that you use to unlock the lock is the same key that you use to unlock the batteries. Again, you don't need the key to put the batteries on the frame, but if you wanted to remove them, you do need that key. So it's kind of handy that you only need one key. And it's really actually handy that the lock has a mounting point on the frame here. That's always a challenge, is where do you put your lock, especially if you're not bringing a pannier bag. And this is actually a nice heavy-duty lock. So if you're not familiar with the Bordeaux series from Avis, these are actual metal bars. Now they're covered in plastic or rubber here to protect your frame. But unlike a cable lock, which can be fairly easily cut, these metal bars are a lot harder to defeat. Now, of course, any lock with a right amount of time and tools can be defeated, but for the most part, these are very, very secure, much more secure than a cable lock. In fact, they're similar to a U-lock, but the problem with a U-lock, of course, is where you put it on your frame. This folds up nice and small. And as well, when you have a U-lock, it can be very difficult to wrap the U-lock around your frame and then around the rack. With the ability to, have some flexibility here with this, you can see you can kind of adjust it as you need to and wrap that around your frame and around the bike lock that you're locking it to. Oh, you know what? I should mention here, a little tip for you: if you get this bike or any a bike with a Avis folding lock, or you add it yourself, we do have them on our website. You'll see there's a little plastic nub here. You can see that the lighting probably isn't very good. That you use to hold the flap down when you get the lock in the case here, and that little nub falls out fairly easily. So I always take some tape and just tape it inside the case so that it doesn't fall out, since that seems to happen fairly frequently with those little nubs. So hopefully I've remembered everything with the bike. You can tell I'm pretty excited about it. It's a pretty long video because there's so many awesome features. I'm going to do some ride tests for you as well. If you want to come try it yourself, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. The things that I'm really keen on for this bike is definitely the control technology. It makes it more comfortable, makes it safer. You're going to ride this bike more often, which is great. The Rohloff, I love the Rohloff Speed Hub, not only in terms of the performance of riding it, I love the high gear ratio, I love the sound of it. I love being able to shift while stopped, but I also love the really low maintenance aspect of it. I just really enjoy not having to worry about maintaining my cassette and derailleur. The dual batteries is fantastic. The water bottles, of course, I already mentioned, are one of my favorite features. This light is incredible. It's definitely worth having. So really, it's an incredibly comfortable and safe e-bike. It's going to last a long time, requires very little maintenance. When you look at all the upgrades, you look at the quality, you look at the fact that it's made in Germany, and you come ride it, you know it's an awesome bike. And so if you get the chance, come try it yourself. You can set up an appointment at citruscycles.ca. So one of the things I really love about the D Lite is how comfortable of a bike it is to ride. Done a great job designing the riding position. Super comfortable grips, of course. The bars have a little bit of rise to them. Good angle on the stem that puts you in a fairly upright position, but still gives you a lot of control over the bike in tricky situations. Find the saddle fairly comfortable as well, and just overall it's really very comfortable. And then of course with the full suspension, gives you a lot of comfort as well. We're going to come up to some broken pavement and potholes up here to give it a test. Got it in the EMTB mode right now. That says sport on the display, but it's an adaptive mode. I find myself using it a lot because it's kind of a set it and forget it mode. If I've got a hill to climb like I did back there, as long as I'm putting a little bit more torque on the pedals, the system knows that it needs to boost me up to turbo to help me get up the hill. So I'm at the top of the hill and just kind of cruising again. Moves you back down to tour to save battery, and I don't have to make any of those changes myself, so I really like that. Of course, you don't see it change on the display at all. It always just says sport, but you can definitely feel it. It's been really wet. We've had a lot of rain this past week. Today's the first sunny day in a while, which is nice to be able to get out and do the video. But it's great having these full coverage fenders, so I can ride through the puddles and not worry about getting wet. And you know, it's all these little things. Anytime you're riding in traffic and you're able to be predictable to cars, driving in a straight line, not avoiding potholes or puddles, and maintaining a consistent speed, it's going to be a lot more predictable, and that makes you safer. So you can see up here we're coming up to some broken pavement, lots of potholes. You can see I could have avoided them, riding right through them. And you know, the suspension on this bike is fantastic. You can ride right through any potholes, bumps and things like that, and it just really absorbs it. You really don't feel it at all, which is great. Again, it helps you to stay safe, allows you to ride at a faster speed. So I'm, you know, going 30, 32 along here, and on a regular bike without full suspension, I'd definitely be going a lot slower, not only for comfort, but just because intuitively you know when you're going over bumps like that on a hardtail bike, there's a chance that you can lose control, and your back end does kind of bump around and fly around a little bit. When you've got this full suspension, what Riesenmuller calls the control technology, you really do notice that feeling of being glued to the ground no matter what the terrain is like. So that allows you to ride a little bit more confidently, a little bit quicker than you normally would. Maybe get to where you're going a little bit faster. So for this ride, I'll take you on some pavement first, and then some trails, some logging roads, and hiking trail, and just to give you an idea of the range of terrain that this bike is capable of. And that is one of the great things about this bike, is it is, you know, really flexible. So right now on the pavement, I don't hear a lot of noise from the tires, which, you know, if you went with a full-fledged mountain bike with knobbier tires, that might slow you down a bit and you might hear that noise. Although we do have knobs in the center, which is great for wet and slippery. They're fairly small, and it's really only the side ones that are bigger, and those only come into play when you get onto the gravel, which we're going to do soon. So it's a really versatile bike, which is great. And when riding through potholes like that, it's not a problem. This is a narrow section of road. It's nice knowing that if I need to come onto the gravel here, the bike is going to handle it no problem. Not only between the Rock Razor tires, but also that control technology, having the rear suspension, really helps keep you on the road all the time. Had a pedal strike there. That was my fault for leaning too far through a corner and trying to pedal. That's always a thing to learn when you get a new bike, is what's the clearance and how far can you lean and still pedal. Bit of a steep climb there, no problem with this Bosch CX drive. And of course the Rohloff has lots of gear range for any hill, really. Another thing you can do with this bike, of course, is because it's an air fork, there is some adjustability that you have with the suspension. So now I'm on an old logging road here, forestry road, fire road, and we have a lot of these on Vancouver Island, and it's a great way to explore the backcountry. That is one of the benefits of having the dual battery on this bike, is you really can go exploring a long ways and not worry about running out of juice. I have my pannier bag on the rack with me, and that rattling you hear every now and then is my pannier bag. It's a nice morning here in Ladysmith. It's not raining. It has been raining a lot. So you'll see a lot of water on the road, a lot of waterfalls beside the trail. But it's not raining now, which is great. I don't mind riding in the rain. I've got all the gear for it. The biggest challenge for me riding in the rain is trying to see out of my glasses with all the water drops on them. But if you don't care for riding in the rain, it is nice having these full coverage fenders, because even on a day like this, when the road's so wet, without the fenders, you'd be getting pretty wet. You know, and so far these tires roll over loose gravel, like I'm riding on the middle here, very easily. Haven't run into problems with losing traction, so that's good. Really comfortable. I love being so upright on these kinds of trails. They're not super technical or anything like that. Okay, here's a nice steep hill. It's got some washouts on it. I'll take the left side here to avoid the washouts on the right. Lots of loose, chunky gravel. Lots of confidence in these brakes. These are some of my favorite brakes, actually, the DRXT. Lots of modulation in them. Very predictable. So, no problem coming down there. This is actually fairly loose sand. No problems. A few bumps and the suspension handles those with ease. Now onto a bit of a hiking trail here, so watch out for the pedestrians. Yeah, it's great having those fenders. With the Rohloff, I do find myself shifting 2 or 3 gears at a time fairly frequently, but as I'm starting to get used to it, I'm starting to do single shifts just to really dial in the exact cadence that I want. It has 14 equally spaced gears, which is a little bit different than on a cassette and derailleur. They're usually uneven. So the more you ride it, the more you kind of get used to the different settings. And makes it easy to dial in that perfect cadence. A bit of mud there and here, and no problem in the mud at all. Okay, and the next section coming up, a little windier, has a few more roots and rocks. Still not really a mountain bike trail, but the bike is very capable of it. It's actually the same frame and suspension that they use on their Delite mountain. In fact, there's not a whole lot of differences. One of the things I'm really excited about is the new Delite mountain Rohloff, which I'll be doing a review of soon, and that has Rohloff with electronic shifting. Basically, like I said, the same frame as this bike, the same suspension, flatter stem to bring you more forward, the pretty flat bars without a rise on them, again just to give you a little bit more control in technical sections. No fenders, of course, no kickstand, and wider 2.8-inch knobby neck tires. But it's really interesting to me how you could actually have one bike and convert it back and forth if you really wanted to. These roots, really no problem for the suspension. We'll come into some very loose, deep gravel here by the hydro substation and see how well these tires handle that. Well, so far I'm tracking fine. Doing some turns here and it's not a problem. Of course, if this is mostly what you're riding on, or snow or loose gravel, then you may want to get a bike with fat tires, or even you can put wider tires on this bike. You would need to pull the fenders off. This is nice and slimy. The wet leaves definitely are a challenge for traction. These Rock Razor tires, so far, no problem. I haven't had any loss in traction. I've had a couple big windstorms recently, so I'll need to keep my speed down and keep my eye out for debris on the trail. Again, it's nice having the confidence that I can stop fairly quickly with these brakes and tire combination. You know, and on sections of trail like this, you can really feel that mountain bike-ness that is available to you. Oh, here we go. Well, this is a good point to turn around and head back up the hill. It's going to dead end at stairs anyways on the trail. I'm not so keen on climbing the stairs. The bike does have walk mode though, so there's a bit of a bypass beside the staircase, and using the walk mode definitely helps get the bike up there. It's pretty much the whole ride. I've had the bike in e-mountain bike mode, and that's also called Sport on here, and basically it is automatically adjusting all the way up to turbo and down to tour for me. And I really do like the e-mountain bike mode. It works great. So I'm pedaling hard enough with enough torque on this climb that I can feel that it's moving me up to the maximum power. Now if I wanted to climb this hill without as much power on my end, I just moved it up to turbo, and now I can tell without me having to pedal really hard, it is giving me maximum power. Now you'll notice I haven't, I'm getting pretty good at coordinating my shifts in terms of easing off the power and then shifting. Could still be a little bit quicker at it, and that's just something that you learn with practice. I don't find that I'm losing very much momentum at all when I do downshift, so that's good. There we go, and mostly that climb I was in 2 or 3. It has to be really, really steep before I need to go all the way down to my first gear. And that's one of the hallmarks of the Rohloff, is it has such a wide gear ratio. It's not that often I use 13 and 14 either. All right, back on pavement here. Again, it's really nice having a bike that can easily make that transition. Now there's the problem with me putting it in turbo. I always forget to put it off, and that's why I really like the e-mountain bike mode, because I don't have to worry about that. I really like the riding position that you find for longer rides. It's very comfortable, nice and upright, but I still have lots of control over the bike. There wasn't any time on those trails where I felt the steering was difficult. And sometimes that can happen if you're, especially if you've got kind of swept back bars, cruiser style bars, it makes it harder to control the bike. These are fairly flat, it's a nice rise. Love the ergo grips. And so really it's a great all-around bike. And so you can see that light come on automatically in the darkness. It does have a sensor. Again, another thing I don't have to think about, which is awesome. The daytime running lights are always on, of course. And then as it gets darker, it brightens up to the 1100 lumen setting. go back onto this road with lots of potholes, and that again is where the control technology is great. Obviously these tires are going to handle the mix of gravel and broken pavement quite well. Alright, well hopefully that gave you an idea of the capabilities of the bike. Certainly you can do a lot with it. It's very comfortable, very safe, lots of great features. I love riding with the Rohloff, and that light's fantastic. The water bottles, you can't go wrong with those. So all in all, fantastic bike. If you'd like to come try it yourself or have us bring it to you, we can also ship anywhere across Canada. Visit our website at citruscycles.ca.